questions. Questions orales. The honourable member for Haldeman Norfolk.
After a decade of costly spending, life has never been more expensive for Canadians. Families in this country pay more for gas, for groceries, for housing, costs that they can barely afford. This Prime Minister's costly budget is just more of the same Liberal policies that have driven millions of Canadians to the food bank, with more government spending, more debt, and more taxes. When will this Prime Minister finally end his costly borrowing so that Canadians can afford to live?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
The member says more taxes. Well, from my count, there's over 19 tax cuts that our government has put in place. We're actually singularly focused on bringing down costs for Canadians. We've paused the excise tax on fuel, cut the consumer carbon tax, we've cut income tax, we've cut GST on new homes, we've cut tax for mineral and critical mineral exploration, we've cut tax for businesses who invest in R&D, new machinery, equipment, IP protection, IT networks, we cut tax for tradespeople who have to travel for work, we cut tax for those who invest in clean tech.
Honourable member for Haldeman Norfolk.
Madam Speaker, the Liberals are just creating new packaging to hide the same old spending record deficits. Now they want to borrow $25 billion to create another bureaucracy that Canadians never asked for. Their so-called wealth fund has no wealth. It's borrowed money built on the same failed infrastructure bank policies that lost money and rewarded only Liberal insiders. Why won't the Liberals admit that they're simply hiding their reckless spending with more deficit funding?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I had run out of time, but because there's so many tax cuts that our government has put in place, I just couldn't fit them in 35 seconds. So let me continue. We cut taxes for those who invest in clean technology, clean hydrogen, clean electricity, carbon capture, utilization, and storage. We cut tax for those who sell their small business to the employees. We canceled the capital gains tax increase. We made it easier to access the disability tax credit. And guess what? Canada has the most competitive tax rate in all of the G7, and we've made it easier for Canadians to file their taxes so they can take advantage of both tax deductions and federal.
The honourable member for Long Range Mountains.
Madam Speaker, the latest StatsCan data is a heartbreak for our country. Nearly 10 million Canadians, including 2.4 million children, are now living in food-insecure households. At home, this means parents in Cowhead and Mainland are skipping meals so their kids can eat. It means seniors are choosing between heat and meat, yet this week's budget shows the Liberals are still addicted to credit card spending that drives up the cost of everything. The Prime Minister doubled Trudeau's deficit. How many more children in Newfoundland and Labrador have to go hungry before this Liberal Prime Minister stops his costly credit card spending and makes food affordable?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, let's take a look at the record across the aisle here of all the programs that these Conservatives continue to vote against. They're voting against a national school food program. They're voting against dental care for Canadians. They're voting against a groceries and essentials benefit that in 5 weeks' time, on June 5th, is going to be putting dollars into the pockets of families right across Canada. These Conservatives vote against affordable childcare. They vote against the Canada Child Benefit. So if the member wants to stand up and talk about making life more affordable for Canadians, she should come on over here, get on board, and vote for the programs that are supporting Canadians.
The honourable member for Long Range Mountains.
Madam Speaker, before the Liberals took power, children and families didn't need school food programs to feed their families. Canada now has the highest food inflation in the G7. A new report from Dalhousie University confirms 1 in 3 Canadians is now forced to borrow money just to buy groceries. Canadian families are being crushed by a decade of Liberal credit card budgeting. The Liberals keep spending more while Canadians get less. Why has this Liberal Prime Minister doubled the deficit? When will he stop his costly credit card spending so families can actually afford to eat?
Hear, hear. Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, fighting for Canadians means delivering a responsible economic plan, which is exactly what we did, delivering a copy to every member in this House on Tuesday. Madam Speaker, Canada has the strongest fiscal position in the G7. We have the lowest debt burden. We have the second strongest GDP growth right now. We have the highest labor force participation in the G7. Madam Speaker, we have the highest per capita investment in the G7, more than double what's happening in the United States right now. But why does this matter for Canadian families? Because when we grow our economy, we create prosperity, we create jobs that are going to support Canadians now and into the...
L'honorable député de Montmorency.
The Honourable Member for Montmorency Charlevoix. Thank you, Madam Speaker. This week's economic update showed that the Liberal reflex is always the same. More credit card budget, more debt, more spending, more taxes. Nothing at all has changed. This new Liberal Prime Minister is profligate. Not only has he doubled the deficit this year, but he intends to do so for the next 5 years, running annual deficits of $55 billion. Meanwhile, Canadians are paying for very expensive groceries, and 1 in 3 is living in food insecurity. When will the Prime Minister slow down his spending so that Quebecers can make ends meet? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know that the Conservatives struggle to understand the facts, so I'll remind them of a few facts. First, Canada has the strongest fiscal situation in the G7. Second, we are the strongest G7 country for investments, and we have the second fastest economic growth in the G7. On this side of the House, Madam Speaker, we are in reaction and action mode. We are governing for the present and the future. We are governing in a way that is responsible and ambitious. We are here for Canadians who need our help, lowering taxes. We're here for them with the dental care program, the training program, and the Canada Sovereign Wealth Fund. That's what it means to build a strong Canada for all Canadians, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Member for Montmorency Charlevoix. Thank you, Madam Speaker. According to a lot of recent data, since we're talking about data, I'll tell you about the Dalhousie report and other reports which have said that Canadians are now buying food not based on what they need, but what they can afford. Food banks are overwhelmed. People can't make ends meet anymore. People in my riding are tightening their belts while the Liberals spend their very hard-earned money. How long will it take for Liberals to understand that Quebecers and Canadians are not bottomless pits of money? And when will they govern and lead in a way that gives people some breathing room? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. There have been economic shocks which have made life harder for Canadians. That's why we need a Prime Minister that understands how serious the situation is and takes real serious action. In my riding, as in my colleagues' riding, many children go to school with empty bellies and then have to learn. But thanks to our school food program, children in schools in my riding and in my colleagues' riding will be able to eat lunch. That's how you build a strong Canada, Madam Speaker. With the head and with the heart. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Madam Speaker, we just lost 300 jobs in only 4 days in the Chaudière-Appalaches region. Following South Shore Furniture, Bestar announced yesterday that it would have to file bankruptcy. We're talking about companies that had been in business for 86 and 75 years, respectively. In both cases, U.S. tariffs, lack of liquidity, and dumping caused by the tariff war are to blame. There are several things that need to be done. The first thing we need to do is pass a wage subsidy to save jobs. We have been saying this for a long time. When will the government finally take action? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. On this side of the House, we are here for Canadians. We know that the situation is tough. That's why we lowered taxes. We have our school food program. We have the worker training program. We're there for Canadians. Here's my question to my colleague. What would he cut? Would he cut infrastructure agreements with Quebec? We gave them $1 billion. Would he cut the 865 units announced in his riding in Joliette, in the Laurentides? Would he cut infrastructure plans like the plan for the Contrecoeur terminal? The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. What we would cut, Madam Speaker, are subsidies to big oil. We have a proposal for a wage subsidy to protect jobs during the tariff war, and that would mean taking action before people are laid off, not after. This week, 300 jobs were lost at 2 furniture manufacturing companies. That's on top of 300 layoffs at Paccard in Sainte-Thérèse. And that's not to mention all the companies crying out for help. Companies like Liard in Joliette, Cirelli MP in Belleuil, ADF in Terrebonne, and Max Atlas in Saint-Jean. And I could go on and on. We will work with the government We're very willing to work with them, but do they understand the urgency of the situation? I'd like to remind the member that there is a telephone buzzing near his microphone. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Of course, we understand how serious the situation is. I accept my colleague's offer to work together. This is the result of unjustifiable American tariffs and also the result of dumping on our markets, dumping of products manufactured in Asia. There will be announcements about this very soon, Madam Speaker. The member for La Pointe-Lille. Madam Speaker, the new April 6th U.S. tariffs specifically target small and medium-sized businesses in Quebec. That's what Tuesday's economic update should have done. It should have protected Quebec from these tariffs. But there's nothing of the sort in the document. The economic update, what it needs, is an update. And it needs it now. We've lost 300 jobs this week alone in Quebec. How many more Quebecers will have to suffer from this before the government finally introduces a wage subsidy? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, the situation is indeed serious. The rules of the game keep being changed arbitrarily and unpredictably by our neighbours, who are still our neighbours, but who are not at all reliable. So what is causing all this? These actions are caused by what our neighbour is doing very unfairly. We are here to implement measures to help people get through these tough times. Announcements will be coming very soon. And in fact, we will make such announcements very soon, Madam Speaker.
The Prime Minister is racking up billions on the national credit card. Canadians thought they were getting a different approach with this new Prime Minister, but it turns out he's just another costly Liberal. The more he grows the deficit, the more expensive things get. And new data out this week proves this. StatsCan confirms nearly 10 million Canadians, almost 1 in 4, are living in food-insecure households. 1 in 3 Canadians are now borrowing money just to afford groceries. Life didn't used to be like this in Canada. Instead of delivering a deficit even bigger than Justin Trudeau's, why doesn't this Liberal Prime Minister end the credit card budgeting so that Canadians can afford to live?
Madam Speaker, Conservatives never met a fact that they couldn't deny. The Spring Economic Update offers an update that shows $11 billion less of a deficit, strong fiscal guardrails, and the International Monetary Fund has recently said that Canada has the strongest fiscal position in the G7. Not only that, but headlines just last night said the largest monthly growth in the manufacturing industry in 3 years. That is what we've seen just recently. Stats Canada is projecting that Canada's annualized GDP growth for the first quarter in 2026 is 1.7%, which is beyond that of expectations. And even the Bank of Canada governor says he's encouraged by the direction the federal government is taking.
The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
The last Justin Trudeau budget projected the deficit this year to be $31 billion. The deficit is $66 billion. That is more than double what was projected, not lower. But, you know, Liberals are spending more and Canadians are getting less. And now hardworking Canadians cannot even afford groceries. Facts for the government. Food bank use has exploded to 2.2 million visits every month, up 100%. Just since 2019, and a third of those relying on food banks are children. Everything these Liberals brag about doing, they've tried before in the last 11 years by themselves. Instead of driving up prices...
Parliamentary Secretary.
I mean, it's very hard to take the member opposite seriously when he mentions children being hungry, when he voted time and time again in this House with his entire party against a national school food program that would take 400,000 children out of food bank lineups. That's shameful, Madam Speaker. That's absolutely shameful that they would stand here and lecture us on feeding children across Canada. We've offered a Canada Child Benefit, which puts hundreds of dollars tax-free into Canadians' pockets. We've reduced the cost of childcare, and we've offered free lunches at school. And the members up opposed all this.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
All week, these Liberals have said they're going to spend less and invest more, except they define what spending is and what investing is. It's almost like they got their accounting advice from Bernie Madoff. Now, what we know is that they're now spending another $65 billion on Canada's credit card. They doubled the national debt, so we now spend more on interest servicing the debt than we do on health care. Are they proud of this record?
The honourable parliamentary secretary.
So let's get acquainted with the facts. I know it's very hard for Conservatives to accept, but the deficit is $11 billion lower than projected. Operational spending has gone from an annual increase of an average of 8% to 2%. We're on a declining deficit to GDP ratio over the planning horizon. Inflation in Canada has been within the Bank of Canada's target range for almost 3 years. AAA credit rating, the highest credit rating of any country in the world. We have a higher per capita rate of job creation than the U.S., 3 times in fact. And the
honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
They really did learn how to manipulate numbers from Bernie Madoff, Madam Speaker. When they say their deficit is down, they projected a terrible deficit. They just made up a number. It's actually double what it was under Justin Trudeau. That's up, not down. Yes. Hate to break it to these guys. And Canadians now have the highest household debt in the G7. Why? Because they're borrowing money to pay for their daily and weekly costs, including groceries. Everything has gotten worse under these Liberals, including debt. Why do they keep racking up the debt on Canada's credit card so we spend more on just the interest portion of servicing the debt than we do on health care?
Yeah. The honourable minister.
Madam Speaker, we are building big projects across the country to create new opportunities and new jobs. Through the new Build Community Strong Fund, we announced a $64 million federal investment to build the largest community centre in Brampton, the Embleton Community Centre, 175,000 square feet of pool, a gym, and childcare facilities, Mr. Speaker. This is what citizens of Canada expect. They expect us to build Canada strong with major projects to create jobs and opportunities across the country. Thank you.
Honourable member for Calgary-Crowfoot.
Madam Speaker, remember when Justin Trudeau's projected deficit was so bad that Chrystia Freeland refused to table it and resigned, and that Trudeau resigned, and they had to get another random Liberal to table it? But this update is so bad, it's another credit card budget with double the deficit that forced the then finance minister and eventually the prime minister to resign. So will the prime minister admit that after 10 years of reckless Liberal taxing, borrowing and spending, nothing has changed?
The honourable parliamentary secretary.
Madam Speaker, to grow our economy and make Canada more resilient, we must diversify our export. And that's why our trade diversification strategy aims to double export to countries other than the U.S., double within 10 years. And in Canada's energy sector, including Alberta, it's got a significant role to play. The percentage of oil shipped via the Trans Mountain Pipeline destined for Asia increased from 39 to 62%, wow. Madam Speaker. Wow. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Calgary-Crowfoot.
Madam Speaker, the reviews on this costly budget are in, and they're not good. Even Andrew Coyne, that pillar of Laurentian consensus, said, quote, "This new government," his air quotes, "has no interest in arresting our economic decline." So if even Andrew Coyne says we're in economic decline and that the Liberals aren't interested in doing anything about it, will the Liberals finally end their credit card budgeting, yes or no?
Madam Speaker, on this side of the House, we believe now is the time to invest and build our communities. My colleague is from Alberta, so can you explain to Albertans which projects he would like to cut? Is it water infrastructure to support the community of St. Albert? Is it the new Japanese Community Centre in Calgary? Is it 355 affordable homes in Edmonton, made possible by Build Canada Homes? What is it he wants to cancel? We want to invest.
The honourable member for Essex.
Speaker, I rise again to share what a resident in Essex wrote to me. Quote, "I just want to express my deep concerns with the direction that Canada is heading. I did not think it could get worse under Trudeau. My response is this. This costly credit card budget means more debt. This Liberal Prime Minister doubled Trudeau's deficit. More spending, more taxes. He's just another Liberal. When will this government end its costly spending so Canadians can afford to live?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, I have to ask myself what the opposition considers inflationary spending. For instance, yesterday, I heard a member opposite refer to our defense investments as if they weren't important, as if they were all inflationary spending. Well, I'll tell you, when I'm in Armagto, when I'm in Fredericton at Base Gagetown, they don't see these as being inflationary spending. They see it as important investments in the people that serve our country and protect our sovereignty. I applaud it, they applaud it, and unfortunately the opposition votes against these.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Madam Speaker, yesterday, the first thing the Liberals did with their new majority was to refuse to share documents about the QRM software cost overruns. Spending has increased by $7 billion, and the Liberals are using their majority to hide the truth from the opposition and from the public. Thousands of seniors are struggling to receive their pension payments, but the Liberals won't give us access to the source of the problem. Is this what we should expect for the next 3 years under this Liberal majority government?
Secretary.
Madame la Présidente, ont été très
Madam Speaker, we've been very open and transparent about the QRM project.
has been invested on a total budget of $4.8 billion. In fact, the modernization of old age security was delivered under budget. Of the $674 million allocated for this phase, only $633 million was required, reflecting strong project oversight and effective cost management. As the project evolves, so does the budget, reflecting the scale and complexity of modernizing a 60-year-old obsolete system. This has been transparently communicated.
L'honorable député de Jonquière.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. I cannot believe what I just heard, Madam Speaker. The Liberals know that there are problems with QRM because they allocated an additional $451 million for QRM and for the Canada Revenue Agency in their economic update. It is absurd to claim that there are no cost overruns when they have included $451 million in cost overruns in the economic update. And yet, they're using their majority in committee to hide information. Just yesterday, the minister said again that QRM is still within budget. Do the Liberals understand that having a majority does not exempt them from being accountable to Quebecers? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. As the member knows full well, that software system manages our main benefits programs, including employment insurance and the Canada Pension Plan, as well as seniors' benefits. This phase of the project is going as anticipated. There will be more phases to come. This project is ongoing and it is absolutely necessary. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent, Aguesque. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what could be more important than eating well? Unfortunately, after 10 years of Liberal government, the situation in Canada is terrible. 1 in 3 Canadians now has to borrow money just to put food on the table. 2.2 million Canadians are visiting food banks. That's how many visits the food banks are having every month, and that's a 100% increase since 2019. It's terrible. And now we have such an expensive, costly budget. Will the Prime Minister just admit that he is just another costly Prime Minister? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, of course, the cost of food is very important. It's very sad that Canadian families have to visit food banks. That is exactly why, Madam Speaker, we are significantly investing in social programs in order to help families. One example of this is the Canada Child Benefit. Thousands of families receive thousands of dollars a year through the child benefit, and that helps them make ends meet. Our social programs are very important, and they define us. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent, Aguesque. Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Secretary knows that I have the utmost respect for him because when he was a provincial minister, he ran no deficit, a $0 deficit, and now it's a $67 billion deficit. The problem is that these Liberals, they make program after program after program, and what do they get as results? Goose egg. 2.2 million visits to food banks every month. Is he proud to see that his colleagues are mishandling everything while he in Quebec handled things excellently? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, I'm proud to be part of a government that is investing significantly in families. We have social programs. We have programs that our American neighbours do not have. We are very proud to maintain those programs and even to enhance them. That's what defines Canada. What makes us Canada. We are getting results. We help people. It's not everyone out for themselves. It's everyone together. The Honourable Member for Côte-du-Sud, Rivière-du-Loup, Katiskaming, Témiscouata. Madam Speaker, how can a G7 country boast while families are cutting back on groceries and skipping meals just to make ends meet? The Dalhousie University report makes it very clear in black and white, Canadians buy what they can afford, not what they need to eat. But with these Liberals, it's always the same old story. They pull out the credit card, they spend without thinking, and the bill always ends up on Canadians' shoulders. When will the Liberals finally make life more affordable for Canadians? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Conservatives have always been clear about the austerity that they want. We'd like to know what they would want to cut, what projects, which ridings. Would it be in your riding that I visited a few weeks ago to announce affordable housing for students? Do they want to cut in infrastructure? We invested $1 billion in infrastructure in Quebec. Would it be the 865 new affordable housing units we just announced in Quebec for those who are vulnerable, for transitional housing as well? What would you cut? Please tell us what you would cut.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, no, she needs to speak through me. The Honourable Member for Côte-du-Sud, Rivière-du-Loup. Madam Speaker, with all due respect for my colleague, I hope, she's taking us for a fool. They're putting everything on the Canadian credit card on the ground. The reality is clear. Groceries are getting more expensive. Family debt is rising. And food banks are overflowing across the country. How can this Liberal government claim that everything is fine when more and more families have to cut back on food or ask for help from a food bank to make ends meet? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, we know that economic upturn has made lives more expensive for Quebecers and Canadians. But in the economic update, we're investing to build a manufacturing industry that is strong in Canada, and this is our agri-food system. After the super deductions we announced in the last budget, now we're announcing a strategic fund for Strong Canada, which will allow us to invest in agri-food, to have more products here in Canada, and to bring grocery prices down. That's what we're doing.
Windsor West.
Madam Speaker, Windsor workers and manufacturers are already feeling the pressure from the Section 232 tariffs, and 150,000 Windsor families are worried about what comes next. And they think that this Prime Minister is just another costly Liberal. He has doubled Justin Trudeau's deficit while Canadians continue to face an affordability crisis alone. If the Prime Minister likes to gamble, he can come visit the casino in Windsor, but leave the Canadians' credit card at home.
That's right. That's a good idea.
No targeted relief and no meaningful support for the workers and businesses that carry this country.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When that party was in power in the 1990s, Canada was a fiscal basket case with debt to GDP over 30%. Debt to budget of over 30%. And we, by contrast, have the lowest debt to GDP in the G7. We have the second best growth rate in the G7, and we are responding. When it comes to tariffs, we know that no deal is worse than a bad deal. The no deal is worse than a bad deal. It bakes in these tariffs, and that manufacturing needs some help. The Prime Minister and the Minister of Industry have been very clear that help is on the way.
Member for Guelph.
Madam Speaker, economic growth is only truly transformational when everyone has the chance to participate and benefit from it. This spring economic update will empower workers through the historic Team Canada Strong program, Canada's largest ever investment in workers, by making education more affordable and by advancing the labour mobility deduction. Our government has also made permanent the employee ownership tax exemption. The former MP for Guelph, Lloyd Longfield, and I are huge advocates. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance please explain how this strengthens the economy for all?
I want to thank the member for her question and for her advocacy. Making employee ownership trust tax exemption permanent will help more workers share in the success of the businesses that they help build. This change allows employers the long-term certainty when succession planning and employees the opportunity to access wealth building opportunities through collective ownership. Madam Speaker, we will continue to build a stronger economy and protect our sovereignty, and making this tax exemption permanent will allow more workers to directly participate in the strength and prosperity that we're building across Canada.
The honourable member for Lakeland.
The Liberals' costly credit card budget plans a deficit of over $65 billion. That's more debt, more costs, more spending, and more of the same. You know, I'd say this PM is just like the last one, but he's twice as bad. He doubled Trudeau's deficit. The debt costs each Canadian $33,000 a year. Who could afford it? Debt interest charges alone, over $55 billion. It's more than transfers for healthcare to all provinces combined. While young Canadians face a jobs crisis and food bank use skyrockets, how can the PM tell Canadians they should foot his costly credit card bill?
My honourable colleague knows well that we have a smaller than projected deficit because we are managing the nation's fiscal capacity with responsibility. We have the lowest net to GDP ratio in the G7. She will know that we have the second fastest growing economy in the G7. Madam Speaker, the path ahead for Canada, despite the challenges we face, is bright. We are launching major projects and investing in the skilled trades to add 100,000 new workers to the economy. We are making massive investments in the Canadian Armed Forces and the Defence Industrial Strategy, which is going to create jobs in every part of this country. We need to invest in Canada, invest in Canadians to grow this economy.
Honourable member for Lakeland.
But here's the Liberal record. Spending up, food inflation up, debt up, photo ops way up, but investment down. A trade deal with the U.S., none. Major projects office approvals, zero. The Liberals landlocked Canada with costly red tape and shifting rules. That's why Canada now has the most unaffordable housing and the lowest investment in the G7. Canada is rich in natural and human resources. No business should be driven out. No family or fixed income should choose between heating and eating. Why will this PM double Trudeau's deficit, double down on costly credit card budgets, and force Canadians to pay more for gas, groceries, and homes?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Madam Speaker, Oscar Wilde once described a cynic as someone who knows the cost of everything but the value of nothing. Do the Conservatives not see the value in investing in making sure families have money to support the cost of living through the Canada Child Benefit and the Grocery Essentials Benefit? Do they not see value in investing in the National School Food Program? Do they not see value in advancing major projects to put people to work in this country? And do they not see value in giving a raise to the men and women who serve in the Canadian Armed Forces? We are building an economy that could stand on its own 2 feet, diversifying our trading relationships, and using our fiscal capacity to support people in need. If that makes me just another Liberal, I am damn proud to be one.
The honourable member for Terranova, the Peninsula.
Madam Speaker, there's nothing worse than going to the post office looking forward to a friendly letter and getting nothing but a dreaded credit card bill. And that's exactly how this federal budget went. Canadians thought they were going to get a responsible budget from a new government. Instead, they were hit with a costly credit card bill. And the only thing new was that they doubled Trudeau's deficit. Canadians don't want a double-double deficit. They want to be able to afford a double-double coffee. So when will these Liberals
Why did these Liberals?
When will these Liberals get spending under control?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Hey, man. It's all good, bro.
He didn't rehearse his lines well.
No.
Madam Speaker, last week the minister was pleased to publish the What We Heard report from the Food Fishery Survey. This was the largest survey done by GFO with over 9,500 participants. We want to thank everyone who responded to the survey in order to allow us to work better for the people of the member across the aisle statement. Our government knows how important the food fishery is in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. We need to get this.
The honourable member for Terranova, the Peninsulas.
Madam Speaker, I was talking about deficits, not fish, but spend, spend, spend. That's all these Liberals want to do. You can't spend your way out of inflation. You think this Prime Minister would have learned that when he wrongfully predicted that COVID spending would actually lead to deflation.
Hear, hear.
Reporters are showing that households are still spending more year over year on food. Rent is going up year over year. Everything in this country has doubled in this costly Liberal decade. How many more reports do these Liberals need to see before they realize that they can't build a country, an affordable economy, on credit card debt?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And it's very rich to hear this debate today. The Conservatives are still refusing to come clean with Canadians about where it is that they plan to cut. That member is from Newfoundland and Labrador. And will he say what project they're going to pull the plug on and tell workers to go home? Is it the Marina Renman Recreation Centre in Corner Brooks? Is the Build Canada Home announcement of 130 secure affordable units for senior in St. John? The water infrastructure through Western Coast? The Tourist Cove Hall that our government is providing funding for? Please, can they just tell us? We've been asking, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member for Regina Wascana.
Madam Speaker, after 11 years of these Liberals, they continue to spend like drunken sailors, with a deficit of $65 billion, debt servicing at $59 billion, and the total debt a staggering $1.7 trillion. This costly credit card budget means more debt, more costs, more spending, more taxes, and more of the same. Why have the Liberals doubled Justin Trudeau's deficit and doubled down on costly credit card budgeting, forcing Canadians to pay more for gas, groceries, and housing? Why?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Yes, Madam Speaker, how depressing it must be to be a Conservative Member of Parliament. I tell you, let me give you some good advice. Canada is not broken. There's a lot of good things that are taking place. All you need to do is open your eyes, open your mind. If you believe in Canada, you need to invest in Canada. That means building on infrastructure. That means investing in Canadians. You have a choice. You can either get on board, be a part of a Team Canada approach, build a stronger Canada, or continue to be a depressed group of people.
Does the concept of politeness resonate with the members? When someone is speaking, someone else should be listening. The Honourable Member for Regina Wascana.
Madam Speaker, it's depressing to have to line up at a food bank when 10 years ago you used to be able to afford groceries. That's right. But Canadians are starting to see that the Liberal promises are just an illusion. To quote an editorial in the Globe and Mail, in the upside-down land of Liberals, a spending spree is a spending cut. Blowing a windfall of billions of dollars is prudent, and failing to prepare for a fiscal storm is, well, just good management. When will the Prime Minister end his costly credit card budgeting so Canadians can afford to live?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, do you know who had something positive to say about the spring economic statement? Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, the premier of the province of that member. When he was talking about the Sovereign Wealth Fund, he said, "We would say this is a good innovation for our nation. It really speaks to what we need to do in this nation of working together at all levels of government to ensure that we can aspire to achieve what the Prime Minister said about Canada being the strongest economy in the G7 and Canada becoming an energy superpower. Canadians want to be part of building this country. Why don't the Conservatives?"
The Honourable Member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Madam Speaker, the verdict on the costly budget is in, and it is unforgiving. The Globe and Mail reports that for every $100 in revenue, this Liberal government spends 97. They said, and I quote, "Even Justin Trudeau would have difficulty matching that performance," end quote. Ooh. Federal net debt now exceeds 40% of GDP, and it's rising. Long-term growth is projected to be a measly 1.7%. So when will the Prime Minister stop borrowing against a future Canadians can no longer afford?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, a few facts from my colleague across the way. The deficit is down. GDP growth is up. Non-U.S. exports are up by almost a whopping 40%. Investment is at a 20-year high. Wage growth is up. 2 times stronger in Canada than the United States. Home prices are coming down, rents are down, and we have a plan to put 100,000 apprentices to work. Those are going to be the steam fitters, the electricians, the carpenters, the mechanics, in his riding and mine, Madam Speaker. That's a plan to build Canada strong.
The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Madam Speaker, the deficit is now going to be $67 billion. That's up from $31 billion, not down. And the member can recite her talking points all afternoon from the Prime Minister's office, but the truth is, for months, this Prime Minister tried to convince Canadians that he was something different. He wanted them to believe that he was a break from the past. Well, Madam Speaker, I guess the mask sure fell off this week, didn't it? The deficit doubled, spending accelerated, growth abandoned. This is not a new government making hard choices. It's the same irresponsible Liberal government making reckless decisions. When will they be?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, when Conservatives talk about spending, they ignore the fact that these are investments that build community and the infrastructure that we need. The member opposite is from Ontario. I'd like to know, what are the projects he'd like to cancel? Is it our commitment to GO 2.0? Is it the Scarborough Subway extension? Is it the Hamilton LRT? Is it the Darlington nuclear project? Is it the critical mineral strategy in Northern Ontario? If they don't believe now is time to build, invest, get out of the way, we're ready to invest in Ontario.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Loaves and Fishes serves more than 15,000 people in more than 44 communities on the island. They're vital and they're growing with a new 24,000 square foot warehouse set to open this month. 80% of Canadians say food prices have increased more than any other expense, and groceries without meat or cheese regularly cost $100 a bag on the island. And yet, this Liberal government continues to tell Canadians they've never had it so good. Every measure we propose, they oppose. How many food bank expansions do these Liberals need to see before they stop their costly credit card spending and actually bring food costs down for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Now you're in trouble.
Madam Speaker, I have a lot of respect for my colleague opposite, and coming from British Columbia, we know that British Columbians want to see measures that are going to support them. That's why things like the Groceries and Essentials benefit that is helping Canadians, it's going to be in their bank accounts on June 5th. They want to see measures like the reduction in the fuel tax, which is saving 10 cents a litre, and that's keeping money in their pockets between now and Labour Day. They want to see the steps that we're taking, and British Columbia can see that we're doing the work to support Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Les Pays d'en Haut. Madam Speaker, this week in my riding, there was good news. $750 million for our hockey players, cyclists, and other athletes. Can the parliamentary update to the Secretary of Sport inform the House about how the spring economic update supports sport across the country? Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Les Pays d'en Haut for his question. It's an excellent one. And for this great news, $755 million is great news for sport. So why invest in sport? To support our athletes, to help our young people get off the streets and find pleasure in playing together, and to help our seniors to break isolation and remain active, and to ensure that we are here to build a strong Canada together. And let's celebrate today this investment in sport.
Honourable member for Red Deer.
Madam Speaker, all week at the Health Committee, Liberals tried to block and silence Conservatives from getting answers on the $300 million Prescribe It IT scandal. They have no problem shutting down debate, covering up and protecting Liberal insiders who got rich off the backs of Canadians. I guess this is the new normal Liberals always wanted. But Conservatives will never stop asking these Liberals the tough questions they want to hide from. Canadians deserve to know, where did the $300 million go and who got rich?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, Prescribe It was launched by the previous government in 2017 following consultations with provinces and territories. The program was always intended to be self-funded over time when it became clear that they didn't have the expected uptake and there was no path towards financial sustainability. Canada's new government made the responsible decision to end federal funding for the program and refocus resources where they will deliver the greatest benefits to patients and our health system. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Red Deer.
Madam Speaker, Canadians don't want Liberal spin. They want to know where and why their money was wasted. Take Michael Green, the disgraced former CEO of Canada Health Infoway, paid over $800,000 a year for more than a decade to run this failed program. And these Liberals are now shielding him from committee for the scandal. Conservatives will not be silenced. We will not stop demanding answers on why $300 million in tax dollars was abused by this government. Michael Green was the first to take the fall for these Liberals. So my question is, who is next?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Canada's new government was elected with a clear mandate to ensure programs and policies deliver smarter, faster, and more effectively for all Canadians. We're refocusing our spending and Canada Health Infoway's mandate so we can support the development of national health data standards while allowing our health sector partners to develop solutions that work for all patients. Thank you, Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Similkameen, South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
At a recent Health Committee meeting, Conservatives moved a motion calling for a full investigation into the Liberals' wasteful $300 million Prescribe It IT boondoggle. The Liberals immediately responded by moving that meeting behind closed doors. Shame. As a result, under House rules, I am forbidden from telling Canadians what happened in that meeting for the next 30 years. Does silencing MPs on committee work for 30 years show transparency from this majority Liberal government?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Our standing committees of Parliament play a very important role. I think it's important that we encourage collaboration as much as we can, Madam Speaker. Many would ultimately argue that what happens in standing committees is very beneficial for the entire House. So let's look forward to seeing more collaboration at the standing committees. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mississauga Centre.
Madam Speaker, climate change is the reason I first joined the world of politics. It is one of the defining challenges of our time and hits the world's most vulnerable the hardest. As the global economy transitions to low-carbon pathways to respond, developing countries are seeking partnerships to reduce emissions, build resilience, and drive sustainable growth. Could the Parliamentary Secretary for International Development tell the House how Canada's international climate finance is advancing solutions and delivering results for those most affected by climate change?
Secretary.
It's a very important question. Climate change is a global challenge that calls on all countries to act. It also presents opportunities for those willing to invest in the future. In our spring economic update, we renewed Canada's international climate finance to help scale up investments in sustainable solutions across the developing world. It means crowding in private capital, including through FinDev Canada, to maximize the impact of every dollar. And Speaker, it means creating opportunities for Canadian clean tech, expertise and innovation to scale solutions around the world. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener Centre.
Madam Speaker, this Prime Minister has made many promises, but the results of those promises are left to the imagination. One of those promises was to spend less than Trudeau. Well, no imagination here. The result is doubling the spending in less than a year. Families cannot pay for food. With these failed imaginary promises, they need results. Will this Prime Minister apologize for promising to cut the spending while at the same time delivering the highest deficit in Canadian history? Just an apology, please.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
No, we will not apologize for building a stronger Canada, Madam Speaker. That's exactly what this government was elected to do, and that's exactly the plan that we're implementing. The spring economic update showed that there's $11 billion less of a deficit. We're sticking to the fiscal guardrails and ensuring that we manage the resources of the federal government and the Canadian taxpayer responsibly. We've also cut excise tax on fuel, which will help get groceries around the country and transportation costs. Immediate expensing for greenhouses. The Strategic Response Fund was given $500 million for agri-food businesses. We've offered a grocery...
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Today is International Workers' Day, and it's a day where we honor workers' struggles for economic justice and human rights. Yet the Liberals repeatedly use Section 107 of the Canadian Labour Code to trample over the right to strike. They cave to CEOs and their corporate buddies and undermine fair and collective bargaining. Will this government finally respect workers, defend their rights, pass Bill C-247 to repeal Section 107 of the Canada Labour Code?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, we believe firmly that Section 107 is used only in extreme cases when other options have been exhausted. Just last year, for example, federal mediators supported over 200 collective bargaining negotiations. 97% of labor disputes are resolved without a major work stoppage. We have a consultation right now on the future of the Federal Labor Code, Madam Speaker. I'd invite the member, her colleagues, her constituents to please go online and participate in that as we look ahead down the road.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Madam Speaker, alarm bells are ringing of imminent global collapse of key climate systems. But the alarms are being drowned out by the cheering of Liberals and Conservatives for new and more climate-killing projects. Key experts say that there's a 50-50 chance of the collapse of the massive and complex Atlantic Ocean current system with devastating and catastrophic results. When will the government stop shutting off the alarms and try to act before we pass the tipping points?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to say that Canada continues to be a global leader, global climate leader, and we are making our voice heard on the world stage. In fact, just last week at the G7, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change presented our ambitious new nature strategy. In the Spring Economic Statement, we renewed Canada's international climate finance to support sustainable solutions across the world, especially in vulnerable places. As the Prime Minister has said in the House of Commons, we will respect our Paris commitments for climate change, and we are determined to achieve them. Our government will continue to take decisive climate action and engage in global conversations and action supporting a stronger, cleaner, safer world. Thank you.
And that's the end of all questions.